Bobby, what's going on, my man? How are you?
Matt, it's good to be back. A day late, but not a dollar short. We're here. We're ready to go.
And speaking of, it wouldn't be a normal Ombudsman Report intro without talking about the Sixers.
Yes, indeed.
Actually, before we talk about how much the Sixers are going to destroy the Boston Celtics tonight,
Huge
clearly.
game one tonight. Huge.
Before we talk about that, welcome to the show. This is the OR Podcast, the Ombudsman Report. My name is Matthew Spurrier, and join with me, as always, my co-host, the lovely, the dashing Bobby Giuliano.
You're too kind.
Too kind, maybe a little too much. We'll start yelling at each other later.
Yep.
So yeah, the Sixers are playing the Celtics. I mean, it's just something we've been doing the past couple of weeks. They've been playing so well. If you listen to the show, you have to be a Sixers fan by now.
Hopefully. I mean, they're definitely the most interesting team to watch. Got a good game one tonight. I think they take the series in 6. But it's going to be definitely a harder challenge than the Heat.
You heard it here first.
Cavs clinched last night, so I think we're going to see the Raptors in the finals, Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think the Cavs make it out of that series.
Raptors do not scare Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons whatsoever. I'm telling you right now.
Phantom of the process.
Phantom of the process. So anyway, welcome to the show. We normally don't talk sports. We normally talk politics, culture, news, opinion. And I think Bobby wanted to start the show off today, actually. Is that right, Bobby? I think we're going to start with culture, right?
Yeah, well, we'll start with a little bit of culture, go into some news, and then, as usual, we'll harp on government overreach, whether it's here or in China or in the UK. A lot of stuff going on. So, yeah, last week we had the White House Correspondents Dinner.
Ooh.
Can they just get rid of this thing already?
Bobby,
It's
the cocktail party of cocktail parties. This is what the Beltway is for.
To celebrate themselves. It's basically just it's like the press's Grammys, essentially.
It really is, though.
Yeah. So they just love to hand out awards to each other and pat each other on the back. We had Michelle Wolf was that's really what the centerpiece of this whole thing has become. During the dinner, they have comedians come up and basically just rip. Well, you'd like to think they rip the party in power, but they rip Republicans no matter who's in power.
I was gonna say.
Yeah. So Michelle Wolf was the comedian this year, and I had never heard of her before this event, but I think this was sort of like her coming out party. I know she has a show lined up or a Comedy Central special lined up. So I guess this was to get her name out there and really start to sell that upcoming work of hers.
Yeah, I can't say I really know too much about her. I mean, I feel like I've heard her name before. Maybe it's just like a passing writer for something on Comedy Central. But, she definitely made an impression.
Made an impression. I mean, I'll say it. She wasn't funny. Not funny, and at least, okay, maybe that's my opinion, but then again, like, what late-night comedian or what comedian in general that's very much a leftist is funny anymore? Stephen Colbert hasn't made a good joke since, like, maybe a year before his old show ended. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel stopped being funny. It's funny. Jimmy Kimmel cares so much about kids, but he didn't have a word to say about Alfie Evans, which we'll get to later today.
Can we stop right there before I say Stephen Colbert? I tweeted this out, man. Whatever happened to Stephen Colbert? He was so funny on the Colbert Report, and he took shots at both sides,
right.
And he sort of played this gimmick of like the ultra nationalist, like Republican man. But it was funny. It was in like good jest. It was a good time, and now he's just like so boring and stale. And
That's all of them.
And I do watch the show. Like, I will turn in because I like Jimmy Fallon as a person, honestly. I do like Jimmy Fallon.
No, I never used to like Fallon.
But
Kimmel was always the best, in my opinion. But
Kimmel was always the best. But, I mean, again, maybe it's just because maybe I've become more, politically active or something. And so I feel about it more. But the jokes just don't land on me like they used to. Right. I don't know.
Well, I mean, her jokes weren't landing. And if you didn't watch it, really – I ended up going back and looking at it. She didn't spend her entire skit attacking Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but that's really what blew up in the news the next day.
Right.
So what did she say about her exactly here? It says, I mean, she made fun of her appearance.
So that's what they're saying, and they said they made fun of her appearance. I don't know necessarily they were making fun of her appearance directly. I mean, they called her Lydia from The Handmaid's Tale, who, if you're not aware, is like supposed to be the ugly old woman that makes all the young ones like what? She's basically the slave master,
right,
of women so they can breed. It's weird. It was not a very flattering comment. You don't want to be called Lydia from The Handmaid's Tale.
And Michelle Wolf later was like, I wasn't insulting her opinion because I said she's so good at, taking facts and burning them and then using her ashes for like eyeliner or something like that. So she's like, I was complimenting her makeup. Like it was, the problem is it was mean spirited. It wasn't a funny
Right.
joke in jest. Like I can remember,
Fair.
I remember watching some of the later ones in Bush's presidency, and like he was laughing the whole time. Like they were jokes in jest. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And Obama had Jordan Peele from Key and Peele, who was sort of like his supposed to be his lookalike and mimicked him, and that was done in jest, of course, because it's Obama.
But this one I felt like was very much put the knife in and then twist it.
Right.
Like that's what we're trying to do. Is Sarah Huckabee Sanders is only good at lying to the American people, and she's the worst. And what is she really? She's a I have this written down. They called her. She's like the lesbian softball captain to get Jim Acosta in line.
Right.
Okay, I mean, I didn't know
Yeah,
we were supposed to...
They made some jokes about her bossing around Jim Acosta.
Right, I didn't know we were supposed to make fun of sexuality like that, but...
Right.
Okay.
Well, you can, because she's left-wing and Sarah Huckabee Sanders isn't. So, again, they just continually prove that their rules only apply in one direction. And
right, that's what this is about.
That's what it's about. And, I mean, honestly, they should... And, okay, so CNN, right? Trump decides not to go to the dinner for the second year in a row now.
Good. Why should he? Why
Why
would
should
you
he?
ever go?
Well, you could argue the Correspondents' Dinner is what made him run for president. 2011,
remember
he's
that?
sitting there in the audience, and Obama gets up there and says, I'm something you'll never be, and that's president. And you can just see Trump. He was not happy at the time. He's just like, all right.
Light bulb went off.
Yeah.
Light bulb went off.
So he skipped the dinner. He was in Washington, Michigan instead.
Oh, okay, yeah, Washington, Michigan.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Yeah, holding a rally, doing what he does, getting up on the stump. He loves it. He absolutely thrives up there.
On the stump. He does
ripping
love
the
it.
fake news media, ripping Jim Acosta. But it was funny. I saw CNN. Of course, they have that like half moon round table with like 15 people on it. You know,
Right.
all of them hardcore leftists, and then like some wishy-washy Republican in the middle getting beat up on.
Jennifer Rubin from New York Times or something sitting there.
But they had the chyron that says Trump skips event honoring the First Amendment to rally his base. If you call the White House Correspondents' Dinner an event honoring the First Amendment, it says all you need to know.
Yeah, we're living in two different realities, if that's
Exactly.
what they think it is.
Honoring the First Amendment.
This whole Trump attacks the press narrative is so overblown on CNN, and I guess maybe it's because they're the brunt of the attack.
Mm-hmm.
But if you listen to Jim Acosta, you would think, we're living in Maoist China.
Right.
And we're just trying to scribble notes about the free press and try to hand them off to each other secretly or we'll end up in jail. Jim Acosta, you have a fucking TV show every single day. No one is censoring you. Okay? People are attacking you because CNN omits facts, right? They don't, if they're not twisting it, then they'll just omit something.
This is a banana.
Right. Exactly. And you're like, all right, sure,
Right.
I guess. But yeah, honoring the First Amendment. How funny. That's hilarious. I actually didn't hear that. I'm surprised.
Well, they put up
that.
the White House Correspondents' Dinner put up the banner that said that, and then of course CNN took it, ran with it. If you don't know what the dinner is or what it normally is, and then you just hear like, oh, there's a First Amendment, there's a thing with the press and they're honoring the First Amendment and Trump skips it. It's just a way to hit, like Rush Limbaugh says, the low IQ voter, the people that don't really know, aren't fully informed, and they see that chyron or they hear about it.
Yeah.
Oh, Trump skips an event for the First Amendment to rally up his own base. Oh, he's so bad. He's so terrible. But I mean, overall, it wasn't funny. They should get rid of the whole thing.
I think they should get rid of the whole thing. I don't see the point of it anymore.
Put it this way, Matt, if they got rid of it, do you think anyone would notice outside of the press?
No.
No.
No one would
Exactly
care.
right. No one would care. And it's not like this drives views like the Grammys. Like it's a relatively nothing event. It's for the press, by the press.
It's a cocktail party.
Yeah, literally.
It's just a cocktail party for the press, for them to get in the black ties and to hobnob around and make connections.
I mean, and to be fair, like the hypocrisy's on all sides.
Yeah.
So Matt Schlapp, he walked out of the event while they were attacking Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and he tweeted something about it. And then I forget, the commentator from CNN like tagged him or showed a picture of him or something of him at all the after parties. He was at like the MSNBC after party. But he walked out of the event to stage it and put it on Twitter.
Well, there's two cases of hypocrisy here that I saw. The first was what we sort of touched on a couple minutes ago. you're writing the rules. You're not supposed to make fun of people for, gender or their sexuality or their race or all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't care. They just sort of, well, it's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She lies on behalf of the fascist regime. That's what I was
Yeah.
saying. Like, it's fair to go after Sarah because she's basically covering for Nazis.
Right.
She's basically covering for fucking Nazis. Give me a break. And this is the thing. Again, I don't care. I think you should be able to say whatever the hell you want. Go after Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I really don't care about that at all. It's just you're the ones who are making the rules.
No, yeah, I'm like Michelle Wolf getting up there and being fairly mean-spirited.
She's a comedian. I don't care.
I don't give a shit.
Whatever.
I don't care. What I care about
Who
is the
hired
double
her?
standard.
Yeah. It's a double standard. It's don't get mad at me for holding you accountable to the rules that you fucking wrote down.
That you hold us to. Like,
You're trying to say this is the new standard, right? Not necessarily Sarah Huckabee Sanders per se, but I guess part of the whole Me Too movement was let's stop ragging on women. A totally, worthwhile
fair, sure.
worthwhile goal. Like worthwhile goal. Okay,
Right.
let's just not beat up on women all the time. Okay, that's fine. But then you just go around and you do it anyway. So I don't understand what the rules are still. It's still a gray area. And then the second piece of hypocrisy that I found was from people on the right who said they couldn't stand for this, how utterly disgusted they were that Michelle Wolf would even suggest something about Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her looks and all this, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was calling Heidi Cruz ugly in the campaign. And all of you were, not giving a shit. You were all just waving your pom-poms around anyway. So am I supposed to pretend that all of a sudden you have this moral compass? No, they're the same thing as the left. They care when they can use it to bash the other side.
Right. And I mean, that's the problem. The problem is, I think the hypocrisy on the left is certainly more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
But the right has no grounds to criticize it because Donald Trump is currently the president.
Right. That's
So
true.
it-
They are the party in
it's like-
power.
It's like, yes, it's like instance after instance, you could point to the left breaking their own rules that they set and hold the right to. But at the same time, like, the dude in charge of your whole party is literally Donald Trump. And every instance that you show of them, breaking their own standards or doing something that you disapprove of, you could probably find an old tweet of Trump's where he already said it. So,
Oh, you can find more than just a tweet.
if Ted Cruz was president, they'd have a lot more ground to stand on when it came to hitting the left over their hypocrisy. But we have Donald Trump, so we're gonna reap what we sow eventually. It's gonna come full circle. But at the moment, it's pretty embarrassing to watch both sides.
This is a side note from what you just said. It's going to come back to haunt us. This is my fear of the Trump moment, right? And a lot of people have articulated this, that Trump was the necessary wrecking ball to sort of break the establishment, right? And he was sort of like supposed to drain the swamp and do all these things.
Sure.
Whether or not he's done that, I don't really care right now. My fear is that the pendulum is swung to the right, and you want it to go back to the middle, right? We want to. Me and you have talked about this before, where we say, "Hey, maybe we should reconsider what powers we give the president, because a reality TV star could just be elected one day and then be in charge of taking us to, I don't know, war."
Or instead of two sides fighting over who has power, how about we just make it powerless?
Right, exactly. Right, you want to think about it. My fear is that the pendulum if we're swinging right, that it's not going to go to the middle, and the left isn't going to say, let's cut this out. It's going to go all the way up. And that's where you get into a point where it's really scary, and we're going to talk a little bit about government overreach this episode, where that's the left's game, right? That's what they're going for. It's not everyone on the left, but unfortunately in our political system, the radical voices dominate the conversation.
Exactly. It's like when you're in a mob mentality takes over. It's not like they're actually nefarious. It's just that when they get power and when you have you get to avoid responsibility by it being the whole apparatus that's doing these things, you end up with some pretty scary shit.
And I would like to avoid the scary shit because we're entering into a time where, I mean, we'll talk about it at the end, but internationally, things are getting hairy in the Middle East and North Korea. The summit's coming up. You never know what's going to go on there. It's not a good time to be really shaky at home, and we're already on shaky ground. Let's not lie.
Certainly.
So, yeah, that's my thoughts. I think we should just get rid of the White House Correspondents Dinner. Just get away with it. It's not serving any purpose other than to get people angry. Whatever.
Yeah, more or less. But I guess continuing on the double standards here. So Joy Reid.
Oh my God.
We'll get the culture and all the gossip out of the way, and then we promise we have some hard hitting news coming in right after this. But
I got some serious stuff.
But for now, let's continue here with Joy Reid here. So speaking of double standards, I remember about 3 weeks ago, right? There was a guy named Kevin Williamson.
Were you born 3 weeks ago?
I was certainly coherent 3 weeks ago. So Kevin Williamson, he was a writer at National Review. He decided to leave there to join the Atlantic to bring a more conservative opinion to that publication, right?
Yep.
Okay. And what happens to Kevin Williamson? Well, they dig through his past. They find a couple of tweets. They find him on a podcast, essentially arguing that if abortion is murder, then the punishment should be in line with what murder would be if it wasn't just a fetus or a baby. And so when someone threw out what would the punishment be, he said, "How about hanging?" Essentially, that was how it went.
Yikes.
I'm pretty sure he does not believe that, and I'm pretty sure he meant for the doctor as well, not for the woman. But I don't think he believes in hanging for abortion.
Right.
I think it was a lot. He was just having a conversation. Okay. Or maybe a little bit of hyperbole. However, that got him fired. That got him ripped on the internet mercilessly for over a week. He lost his job over it. Okay. How about I don't know, Laura Ingraham just another week ago, right? So she tweets something about David Hogg, right? Gets her sponsors attacked, gets totally dragged for it, about how he whined about college applications. Pretty innocuous tweet. And then we bring yourselves to Joy Reid, who's not a Republican or conservative like Kevin Williamson and Laura Ingraham, but she's a card-carrying member of the left. She's in good favor.
Card carrying, yeah. No, she issues the cards. She's so far up in the hierarchy.
She's just a social justice warrior.
Yeah, she is.
She just is. She embodies all of that just hyper outrage culture that is on the left.
Yeah, and not everyone on the left is that SJW card. Like, sure. I would say Rachel Maddow is a little more serious, even though she probably agrees with a little bit of identity politics. That's just part of the left. Right, Rachel Maddow is a little bit more serious. Anderson Cooper, for as much as you don't like him, he's not pulling the identity politics card every single chance he gets.
I agree.
Joy Reid is one of these people who will pull that card, like, very quickly, immediately, actually, as soon as you start to get out of line. So why don't we go through what she said, and then her response.
Be my guest.
Said so. Basically, she made a bunch of clearly homophobic blog posts or sentences, whatever you want to say.
It was about 10 years ago.
It was about 10 years ago, and she was talking about how it's weird to see two guys making out, and how she didn't want to go see Brokeback Mountain because she didn't want to see two guys kissing. Which, in today's day and age, you can't write that shit. Right, like
basically, yes.
That will get you in trouble today, and whatever, it should. There's no need to be attacking people like that. And Joy Reid, if she sincerely apologized for this, I'm of the camp where you're allowed to make a mistake, you're allowed to own up to it, you're allowed to apologize and move on with your life. Exactly,
especially 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
She clearly hasn't advocated that for a very long time.
Exactly.
And I mean, particularly on this issue, 10 years ago, 2008, Obama was running for president, running for conventional marriage. That was in his stance.
Obama and Hillary.
And Hillary up until 2013 was against gay marriage. And then once she checks the win 51% and she starts heading the other direction.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we're going to come down here hard on Joy Reid. See, I don't think what we should do to Joy Reid, what happened to Kevin Williamson and Laura Ingraham. She shouldn't lose her job. She shouldn't lose her sponsors. We shouldn't attack her. We shouldn't demonize her. If she apologizes, like she tried to, sort of. If she apologizes and sincerely means it. But in here lies the problem.
In here lies the problem because instead of owning up to, I made some stupid comments when I was young, I don't mean
On
it
her own
anymore,
blog,
on her own blog,
like totally her own site.
Joy Reid decided instead to suggest that someone hacked the internet
Potentially the
and
Russians.
potentially the Russians.
Literally. This is just not making this up now.
Vladimir Putin personally hacked into Joy Reid's blog
From
and
10 years ago.
and wrote these comments. And right now, what is it, on April 27th, is trying to get her in trouble. This was ridiculous, and this was what made me angry. Like, just own up to it. If you're sorry, just own up to it. Like, we're not the ones who are going to attack you.
Like, she literally could have come on the air and said, okay, I mean, someone have unsurfaced these clips. I don't remember writing that. I haven't believed this for a very long time. I assume that I said it, and I apologize deeply for holding that. And, you know, I'll do something in the future to show I'm making up for it, whatever. But she gets on her show. I recorded it to watch it. And she's like, I hired a cybersecurity team to look into it, but they could not conclude that any hacking was done.
Yeah, no shit.
She was like, I genuinely don't remember writing this. And further, I genuinely don't believe that I wrote it. So it went from Russian hackers, which couldn't be proved, and this is all unfolding over 2 or 3 days. And then eventually her excuse is that I don't recall doing it and I don't believe that I wrote it.
Right.
Like, come on. Like,
yeah.
And the thing is, she gets a pass. She gets
of course.
a pass.
Well, of course.
People all over the media come out and they're like, I know Joy Reid personally. She does not hold these positions and she's a very good person and yada, yada, yada. Multiple people coming out, backing her up like this.
Oh, and we're saying, like, we know she doesn't have those positions. All we want is a fucking apology, because this is the game. Again, the same thing with the Michelle Wolf
I don't even
thing.
want an apology. I don't really give a shit.
Sorry.
Again, playing by their rules.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get to. This is your rules. Your rules are, you write something in your past. And, you know, Douglas Murray articulated it this way one time. And I think, I can't remember what the subject was exactly, but it pertains to this as well. It's, do we want to live in a society where you are defined by your absolute worst moment? And there's something to be said of, you know, I mean, if it's violence, then yeah, sure, we can define you by the violence. You know, you can go to jail. But if you say an off-color joke, if you write something that you no longer believe, the rules that are being set up are, if your pants are around your legs, you can't pick them up. They must stay there forever, and you must walk around with your. That's the rules.
Yeah.
And so, I'm of the camp of, let's move on. We can move on, but I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't salivating and enjoying every single moment of this Joy Reid scandal, because like I said earlier, Joy Reid tries to whip up hate mobs to people and tries to attack them, and she's a card-carrying leftist, and I just think that it was sweet to see her get a taste of her own medicine.
I mean, a taste of her own medicine. Barely got a spoonful. Like, no comment from MSNBC. You know what I mean? Whereas Fox News has to put out a statement about Laura Ingraham.
True.
You know, her show goes on unimpeded. She didn't have to take a week off. All she has to do is give a 2-minute monologue where she totally changes the subject and focuses on her total advocacy for LGBTQ and like all that. It's just imagine just for 1 second that her party is different. Imagine that she's a Republican.
Imagine Tucker Carlson wrote that.
Okay, yeah. Imagine 10 years ago it comes out, Tucker Carlson. Oh, she made a joke about Ann Coulter basically being like being like trans, how she's like manly looking or something. Okay, that was one of the things she wrote.
Interesting.
So imagine Tucker writing how who did you say on MSNBC? Rachel Maddow. Imagine a post from Tucker Carlson 10 years ago saying Rachel Maddow kind of looks like a man, and I don't want to see Brokeback Mountain because, you know, it's 2 guys kissing. The outrage. You'd have David Hogg on Twitter calling for more boycotts. You'd have everyone just relentlessly attacking him, saying this is demonstrative of who he is as a person and that his bigotry has never gone away and we need to boycott his show, and demanding that he make charitable donations and you know, give time and service to show that he's repented. And it would go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It would be all over the internet. It would not go away. But all Joy Reid has to say is, oh, it might have been the Russians. And then when that excuse dies, it goes, I genuinely don't believe I wrote it. So we're moving on here. And everyone just, yep, moving on. Moving right on.
Well,
Fine. Let her give her a pass.
You and I sort of have
just because she has their party affiliation.
Right. Well, you and I sort of have an inclination to recognize these sorts of patterns. I guess like we're looking for them. We're looking for the double standard.
It's hard to miss them.
Well, this is the
constant.
thing. Well, this is the thing. We have people who are on the left that listen to this show, I'm sure. And it's just like, this is a perfect distillation of what we're talking about, where the standards are, it's a double standard. Again, all this stuff is double standard. And I'm not a right-winger. I'm not a Republican, right? I'm not a Democrat. But I can see this. Well, how can you not see this? How can you not see that the media is all liberal and they're not held to the same standards? They're not.
They're not.
And MSNBC doesn't want to get rid of Joy Reid. They can do it. Whatever. I don't care.
No, it doesn't matter.
But
they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't.
They shouldn't. But at some point, it's like the people on the right just have to say, nah, fuck you.
That's the thing. I saw a bunch of people, sort of the more MAGA Twitter accounts coming out and just saying like, oh, how about we just continue to call for boycotts of Joy Reid and play by their game? And that's the point. The more that they get nasty and hold only one side accountable, the more the other side is going to get vindictive. So, I mean, they're playing with fire. They're playing with fire.
They are playing with fire. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't really have much more to say on that.
No. So,
just the hypocrisy. So funny. Every week.
And dude, the media does such a disservice to itself, because like that White House Correspondents Dinner, they can't even see that the average American looks at that and just and them, you know, ripping on Trump and ripping on his administration the whole time. They look at that and they just think, wow, the media is pretty disgraceful. So like, they act like they're above Trump and they need to hold truth to power, and then they go out there and act the way they do, and it just, I mean, it lowers them. Their trustworthiness is below Trump. Like on all polls, you can see that.
And one more of the White House correspondents.
They wonder why.
Yeah, they do. Well, they wonder why.
They genuinely wonder. Like they don't actually see it, which is amazing. Because if you back yourself up from it and you're not actually part of it just for 1 second, it's so clear.
Why didn't America like the White House Correspondents Dinner? Oh, well, maybe because Michelle Wolf talked about how awesome it was and everyone should try getting an abortion. Yeah. And like 50% of the country doesn't agree with abortion. Come on.
Yeah.
That joke, and I'm pro-choice. And I'll, say that, whatever. I'm pro-choice. That joke was a little off color, I thought.
Murdering babies. It's fine, though. As long as you're in Washington, D.C., you can ship, high-priced champagne, go to an after-party afterwards, and act like you're defending the free press and the First Amendment. Yeah,
right. Exactly. No one's struggling more than Jim Acosta.
Oh, boy.
I can't stand Jim Acosta. I don't want to start talking about him now.
So someone exercising their First Amendment, I guess we'll just touch on it real quick, Kanye West. He's continued the tweets.
I think we talked about this.
We did talk about him briefly, but he's really kept up the tweets. I saw today he actually did meet with Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA.
I saw interesting.
Which I thought was interesting. He's now just taken to tweeting out just conversations he's having with John Legend about, slavery. And he also said he doesn't know enough about conservatism to call himself that. He just thinks everyone blindly following a single thought process isn't healthy, which I agree with 100%.
Perfect. That's
all he needed to say.
That is the important part of the Kanye thing. It's not the important thing isn't and shouldn't be.
He now switched sides.
Look, conservatives, we finally got a celebrity. Yeah. It shouldn't be like that. You guys sound so petty and sad. Come on, Charlie Kirk, you sound sad when you're railing about how LeBron should stay out of politics or Lauren Ingraham out of politics. And then as soon as Kanye wears a fucking red hat, all of a sudden, yo, Graduation was like the dopest album, dude. No, Charlie Kirk, you don't listen to Kanye, bro. Yeah, all right, just let it go. So I think we should just stop listening to celebrities. That's fine.
That'd be great. I'm fine with that.
I think we can just leave it there. And, it's important that Kanye doesn't call himself a conservative. And I'm not a conservative, you're a conservative. But you'd like to think that if you're going to call yourself something, you've done the reading and you've done the homework. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that Republicans, at least, aren't saying Kanye's a conservative, because that just does real harm to the movement, I think.
Right.
In my opinion.
And it's funny. They're like, I mean, his tweets started coming out seeming more pro-Trump supporting, and everyone's just like, "Oh, he's finally on our side. I'm finally on our side." And someone, I don't know, Ben Shapiro was like, "It's gonna be funny when this turns," and then the next thing you know, he's like, "Oh, I'm not actually conservative."
Exactly.
They get ahead of themselves, and it's very obvious, and you can almost see it coming every time. But both sides fall for it.
They're just starving for pop culture celebrities, dude. It sounds mean to say, but the right just isn't cool. Like the at
No,
least
the right's not cool because they can't appeal to emotion or to pop
right.
culture.
Yeah,
It's very
it's
easy to
right.
be of the left and just say, "Oh, my intentions are good," or "I'm looking out for blah 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 blah." It's all emotion. Whereas on the other side, you have to have some rationalization to it and put some thought behind it.
You
And
have to think.
Yes, you're not going to get a celebrity, doing that kind of work. Whereas they could just, put a tweet out there and signal their virtue, and boom, they're immediately adored by the left. It's
Right,
just,
you could just be
it's not gonna
Kumail
happen.
Nanjiani and just somehow
That's
be one of the most influential people in the world, even though all you do is be a geek on Silicon Valley.
pretty much.
Um,
Although the Big Sick I enjoyed that movie. I like Ray Romano. He was pretty good.
sure. I like Kumanji's acting. I just don't like his Twitter personality.
Sure.
Who's the real guy? Alfie Evans. I know you wanted to bring this up. This is something that really sticks in your craw. So let's hear it. Alfie Evans, for the people who don't know.
Okay, so Alfie Evans and what we're going to follow up that with is really just demonstrative, as we talked earlier, about the governments, across the whole world really, but particularly in the West where there was, democracy and freedom, in my opinion, clamping down on all that.
Yeah.
As the state gets bigger, and they start to control and just get their paws in more and more aspects of society, inevitably with that power comes an abuse of that power and a corruption of that power. And I think is very demonstrative. I don't know who said it, but they said that Europe is basically 10 or 15 years ahead of the United States. And if that's the case, I don't want to go where they're going. You can look at that, whether it's, immigration or, just, socialized medicine that they've had now for a while. And we're on that path towards with Obamacare and everything that, Bernie Sanders and Medicare for all, that's going to be a big issue in the next elections. So Alfie Evans, he was a 23-month-old baby. He died this Saturday on the 28th, sometime early in the morning. So just recap the whole story here. He was born in May 2016, and later that year suffered a series of seizures and was admitted to the hospital. He was diagnosed with a degenerative brain condition that was largely a mystery to doctors. I don't know medicine much, but they said that it was, let me find it here. It was a mitochondrial DNA depletion syndrome.
Powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah, the powerhouse of the cell is the mitochondria. That's my science education.
I was going to say that's the extent of my science knowledge.
Essentially, he was in a vegetative state. I think when it initially happened, he had maybe like 60-70% brain function, and it might have decreased in the months since. He's been basically in a coma for a year, on life support in the hospital, shortly after his birth up until recently. So in the UK, they, based on the recommendations of his doctors against his parents' wishes, the courts ruled essentially that this kid needs to die. There's really no other way around it. This went through court for months. There was multiple rulings which were appealed. Finally, Judge Anthony Hayden over in the UK ruled that that treatment was, quote, not in the best interest of the child, and that they were to remove life support based on the recommendations of the doctors. So a couple points here. His parents fully disagreed. They were fighting for him to stay on life support, keep trying to find treatments or try different things. And the doctors just ruled that, this kid he's in a vegetative state. He'll never be fully normal. We don't really know what's fully wrong with him. It's a little unclear. And we decide that pursuing further treatment would be harmful to the boy. And so for his best interest, he basically needs to die now. And it's striking over in the UK. Like, if that was in America, you could, pull him right out of that hospital, go get a second opinion. But I mean, based on the way the court system there works with the national healthcare system over there, he's in that hospital. What those doctors say, once it goes to court, the court ruled that the doctor's opinion matters more than the parents.
Well, they essentially own your child.
They say exactly right.
Which is really a scary thought for doctors because, like you were saying, in the United States, you can go take them out and get a second opinion. What I would fear in the UK is if I take this kid and check him into a hospital, he may never come home again. And his life is just, up to the doctors, which is fine, what you want. But this case, I think, I was looking all over for counterpoints.
Up to the opinion of the doctors. The final decision comes down to the parents and the parents only.
But not in the UK.
Not in the UK, exactly.
I was trying to find explanations because I was like, this isn't a thing. There's no way they're just taking this kid and saying this kid's got to die. Are the parents trying to steal him or something? I thought there was something in. But what you had here was the court essentially ruled this was in his best interest. And so they had police line up at the hospital. Mm-hmm. And if you try to take this child, we will put you in a cage.
Right.
If you try to take your
there
child...
was protesters. There was people that supported the parents that met outside and kind of had a rally outside the thing.
Sad.
They increased police security at the hospital.
And it was so sad because he was being offered... The reason the parents wanted to take him out wasn't because they were like, oh, he's going to die in the hospital. They were saying, hey, the Italian government has flown a plane here and offered to take him to Italy for experimental treatment, right? They're not going to the witch doctor down in the bayous of Louisiana.
Or something.
Right.
And even that.
They're going to Italy.
If this baby was at home, right, and the parents decided to, do something that would eventually cause his death, they would be prosecuted for it. But the hospital and the doctors can decide it's time to kill the baby, and it's humane.
I want to bring up this point because one of their reasoning was this Alfie Evans needs to die with dignity.
Yeah.
And it's such is Orwellian a good term to use here? Such a
this
weird...
whole situation is Orwellian.
Yeah, where it's
now, comfort is one thing. You can make Ben Shapiro talks about this. You can make a legitimate argument about comfort. So, and that was basically the grounds that they were arguing for, is that the further treatment is not going to be successful in their opinion, although many doctors disagreed. And so because of that, it'd be more humane to pull him off the ventilator, where he would then, in their opinion, die in a matter of minutes, if not less than an hour, and then that would be his death with dignity. But the dignity is where there's a holdup, because who is to decide that is the dignified way for that child to go out?
I was going to say, is there a dignified way to die in the end, especially when you're a child like this? There is no dying with dignity.
It comes down to parents' discretion. The parents should make this decision. Yeah. Especially parents that care as much as his clearly do. I mean, so I have a little timeline here. So these court rulings were over the first couple months of this year. January, there was one in March, and the family continued to appeal it. Eventually, that judge made the ruling that they need to pull him off. On April 11th, specialists drew up an end-of-life care plan, and the judge approved it. April 12th, the father and the protesters gathered outside the hospital and insisted on taking his son home. He said, okay, if you're going to make him die in the hospital, then I want to take my son home, spend my last couple hours with him, and he can die in my house. They wouldn't let him leave the hospital, like you said. They brought extra police presence and forced the kid to stay there against his parents' wishes.
One of the more darker, I guess you would say, aspects of the story was, oh, crap, I just lost my train of thought.
What, that he had a free ride to Italy?
Well, that and, what is it? I can't believe I just completely... Oh, they were basically... It appeared at one point they were, extorting the dad.
Yes, I'll get to that. So...
Okay.
So the parents, 4 days later on the 16th of April, made a habeas corpus plea to a different court, saying their son's being wrongly detained and they want to take him home. That was denied by the courts. On April 18th, this family is apparently very devoutly Catholic. The American conservative pro-life movement sort of picked up on it, and this is when it started to get buzz about 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. On the 18th, they were flown to Rome to meet the Pope, who expressed his wishes that this kid come over to Italy, get free medical care. The Italians, a couple days later, gave him citizenship in hopes to move the courts in the UK to let him out of the hospital, where they're forcing this kid to die despite his parents' wishes. So, they made a second plea to the Supreme Court in the UK, which the Supreme Court shot that down. They didn't want to hear it. Not that they rejected the plea, they just weren't going to hear the case. So the parents made an application to the European Court of Human Rights because, I mean, all those countries are so tied in there with the EU. You know, some government administrator in Brussels is running your kid's life based on a court's decision.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. So that got shot down. They appealed to the Human Rights Court to take Alfie to Rome after the Pope offered to give him citizenship in Italy and free health care. So on the 23rd, the courts rejected their pleas. They said the kid has to stay there, and they removed his life support on the 23rd, which was Monday, right? And they initially said, you know, this is in his best interest because the kid will die quickly. Okay, that was the 23rd, late at night on the 23rd. Mm-hmm. 2 days later, the father, it comes out that he's been giving the kid essentially mouth to mouth after the first 24 hours. The kid breathed on his own for 24 hours. Then the father a couple times had to give it mouth to mouth to keep him alive. The courts decided to ruled again, gave the kid oxygen, but just stopped feeding him. So now they're starving this kid in this hospital.
What is dignified about being taken off support, back on support, starved to death?
Like,
where's
thank God
the
for
dignity?
the Second Amendment. Can you imagine if this happened in America to happen to your kid? Like, that's what people mean when they talk about the Second Amendment.
It was so sad seeing the NHS, which is the National Healthcare Service of Britain, basically break this father. Break him. You know, he was trying to get, I think, time to take his child home, right? Like you were talking about. And
after they took him off the ventilator.
After they took him off the ventilator. And it came out the doctors, was it the doctors or the judges? They were sort of like...
The doctors.
Haphazardly, in a snarky, disgusting way, saying, well, then the dad better change his attitude if he wants his son to come back. It's like, dude, change his attitude. He's watching his son die. He's giving his fucking infant son mouth to mouth because
you pull him off the
assholes won't let him just take him to Italy. He's not going to Libya. He's not going to Libya to go see some random witch doctor. He's going to Italy.
And it's not like they're pulling him out of the hospital to kill him. Like they're going to pull him out and drop him off a bridge.
Right.
You're the ones killing him. They're trying to save this kid.
And
you're not allowing the father to do that.
And this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was sort of the, what is is it Justine? The euthanasia case.
Fox?
No, sorry. The euthanasia case where the parents were arguing that they should take her off life support. Is it Justine Sacco? Maybe I'm completely wrong.
That sounds.
But it was they were lobbying to take her off life support, but the pro-life people said they couldn't, and so they were fighting for her to die with dignity. This was the opposite. This was the family saying, "Please give me my kid. Please, I'll do anything." You know, after the doctors told the dad to straighten up, essentially, like he's a fucking school kid.
Yeah, so the 23rd, they pulled him off the ventilator.
The father released a statement saying, like, thank you for, like, the outlove and the support and the prayers. Please, can you guys just stop doing this? I really want to see my son again. It was so sickening, and...
Like, they broke this guy, literally.
They broke this guy.
The guy, there's the direct quote. It was about 2.5 days after they took the kid off the ventilator. He's already had a free pass. He's been granted citizenship to Italy. They actually brought helicopters. They were on standby, essentially, to bring the kid out of the UK, but no. And the doctor says if Alfie's parents want to bring him home and out of the hospital for him to die there, they need a, quote, sea change in their attitude.
Disgusting.
That's disgusting. Because when this kid died, and he did now die, the only people visiting his grave are his parents.
Exactly.
Or his family. That doctor's not going to go visit that kid's grave.
You think the bureaucrat in Brussels? You think the bureaucrat in Brussels is going to make his way over to, Salisbury, England?
But they know what's best.
And a couple people on Twitter defending this, right? Because you can't attack the National Healthcare Service, God forbid.
Government is religion, dude.
The state is a religion. Dave Smith talks about this all the time, and more I'm starting to see how right he is. The state is religion, and the people defending it were, well, it wasn't the government that sent this kid to die. This went through the courts and had opinion. I said, oh, even better, someone you don't elect gets to decide to kill your kid. Oh, then never mind. That makes it even better. Oh, forgive me. I thought it was Parliament voting to kill my child. It's just some judge that's been there for 40 years and doesn't know me and won't visit the grave. That's fine.
He's got a black robe on. You can trust him.
Right, he's got a black robe on and he wears a powdered wig or something.
And dude, and this is just, and people say this isn't demonstrative of what government is. This is perfectly demonstrative of what government is. It is abstract. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about protecting your rights. It will trample on them if it's given the opportunity. And the more of these cases that arise, I don't know why people in this country are like, hold on, that's where everyone else is going. Let's go the other direction. But instead, you get politicians claiming we need Medicare for all. We need government-run health care. Bernie Sanders just argued that we now need government-run jobs, a job for everyone. If you don't have a job, the government will give you a job. And it's like, we've tried all this before. Like,
I was just talking to my mom about that, actually. She was asking about job creation. She was like, what's the deal with that? And my mom, she doesn't pay attention. But I told her the story of Henry Kissinger going over to the Soviet Union. I think it was Henry Kissinger, but he went over and they said, look at our jobs program we have here, and it was a bunch of people digging a hole with a shovel for construction. And Henry Kissinger, I think it was him, again, he was like, why aren't you using construction equipment? Like, why aren't you using a bulldozer? I said, oh, because this is a jobs program. Use a bulldozer, you get rid of 50 jobs. And so it just goes to show, like, jobs aren't the problem. Like, the goal of an economy shouldn't be to create government jobs. Jobs arise organically when people are creating wealth. Exactly. People are creating wealth and they arise all by themselves when you need a service to be done. So, yeah, Bernie Sanders is an idiot. And also...
And a healthy economy does not have 0% unemployment.
Right. Yeah, I mean... I don't know the nuances between that. I mean, maybe... I mean,
our employment rate right now is about 4.5%.
Like, under 5 is considered full employment, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you'll never get 100% employment. That's a dream. But anyway, the healthcare systems in Europe, and when you value, like, this weird collective idea over the individual, I used to think people were conspiracy theorists for talking about euthanasia.
We're talking about death panels. Remember that discussion around Obamacare?
Yeah. And
do you remember that?
Was that what is that?
So about in '08, when Obamacare came out, they were talking about how, how do you end up deciding who gets what Medicare treatment when the government's basically right. And the Republicans were like, well, it's going to eventually come down to you're going to have to set something up, some kind of panel where they're going to decide who gets a hip replacement based on resources and how much need and who it's going to affect the most. And like someone's going to have to eventually think this out. And like, oh no, that's not how it's going to work. And like, no, that is how it works. Like,
right.
Okay.
Exactly.
When you get the government, one administrator running the whole thing, you don't have the resources to go around. I mean, it came out of being, compassionate for the kid, but those people are making decisions based on resources, based on, actuarial tables where this kid really doesn't have a shot. He's going to cost X amount over the next years. And, we could probably just pull the plug on him. And like, if you don't think it's going to come down to equating your life to the economic value of it, they say capitalism is dastardly and values money over life. But, big government, in these instances where you see it in real life happen, that's where the real threat is.
And it goes into, remember last year, I think it was in Holland, and they were talking about eliminating Down syndrome. So if you go to like Finland, Sweden, and Denmark, like there are no people with Down syndrome in those countries. And it's basically because they've euthanized the Down, if they find a baby's going to be Down syndrome, then they'll just euthanize it. And it got to this weird place where I wish, if you're interested, you should look up the clip where you had
the kid.
Well,
I don't remember his name.
I forget the guy's name. You have a man with Down syndrome being shown the math on how much more his life costs to a regular person, and therefore we should get rid of all the Down syndrome people. And it's like, do you understand what you're doing right now? Like, you are telling someone they're not worth anything. You're telling someone that it'd be, we'll pretend his name's Alfie. Oh, Alfie, it'd be, you cost a lot of money, Alfie. It'd be a lot more cheap if you weren't around, huh? Like, nudge ribs. No, dude, you're talking about aborting people. You're talking about killing and taking these lives away. And I think it was Ben Shapiro talked about how in praying for Alfie Evans at Liberty University, at his speech, he spoke at their convocation. A man with Down syndrome got up and led the prayer and was sort of talking about how he's happy he was born with his condition so he can be an advocate and say, maybe you don't think this is the best life to the best life to live, but it's the only life I have, and it's the only life worth living. So
I remember that speech. I don't know what that one was, but while you were just talking, I Googled it. If anyone wants to look it up on YouTube, it's called "An Appalling Glimpse at Dutch Public Health. Down Syndrome Man is Told, ... But if you type that in, you'll be able to find it. And they basically just run the math on, like I said, actuarial tables. Over the course of your life, an average person will cost the government this much in healthcare expenses.
Sorry, Bobby.
Boom.
You cost $100,000. We got to cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get cut off, dude. I've had a couple knee surgeries. I'm a risk.
Me too, man. We had two knee surgeries.
And that's the point. When you have this single payer option running from the government, this is a real debate that's going to happen. You're going to have people worrying about costs and worrying about service, and if that little baby has to get pulled off the ventilator to save some money so someone else can get this down the line, those are the decisions that a court or a bureaucrat or someone that isn't you is going to make. And you see it in real life here, and then people will deny it until it eventually comes to our shores.
I am a believer in a safety net for the lowest percentage of our population, people who can't take care of themselves and what have you.
Don't disagree. That's not what we're arguing.
Exactly. That's what I'm about to say is, but when you have these national health services where, okay, we pool all the resources, then we got to dole them out. Instead of you doling out your resources, the government has to dole it out to see what you're worth. And let's not kid ourselves. There's never enough money to go around. Someone is always going to get shortchanged. And that's why in capitalism, at least you have the opportunity to fight for your worth, or at least, get help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go a little bit happier. Just because this one was funny. I don't know if anyone saw this tweet by the Metro Police in England. I don't know who, but this was another Orwell state. Britain is becoming crazy.
Dude, that's what I'm
nuts.
saying here. If you
really
don't think
downhill.
it can come here, you're not paying attention. You're
Exactly.
really not paying attention to think that like these are outlier things. Like, no, this is indicative of what's going on. So, this is a funny story, sure, but it's really not a funny story, because if this is your government has the ability to do this to you, then you have no freedom at all. So the picture was pretty funny, though. I will say that.
No, it was funny because they put it up, and they put it up as they thought, like, "How we got you," but everyone correctly pointed out, like, "Yeah, fuck you."
Yeah,
we want to give you all the middle finger too. So go ahead.
So a driver in the UK, he was driving like a light blue Range Rover. 67-year-old Timothy Hill. He was annoyed at all the number of traffic cameras that would track not just take a camera of the intersection, but would track your speed and give tickets that were coming around his town. So he fitted his car with a jammer of these. I don't know how that works, but they can't pick up his speed once he blows through these intersections. So because of this, he evaded probably 3 tickets in a month time period. And when police started when he's just my man's just trying to get to work on time. When the police started to look into this, they I guess reviewed the tapes and everything, and they see him on camera flipping off the traffic camera like multiple different times. So like the pictures is just him in his Range Rover, like leaning forward on the dash, just flipping off the camera,
Good, as he
blowing
should.
through intersections. More power to the guy, okay? Throw a big fine at him, something like that. But I guess maybe because he tampered a bit, he threw his jamming device in a river once the police investigation was launched. So police chief in North Hampshire said that he, quote, prevented the course of justice. And then additionally, his behavior, him throwing the finger, landed him an extra sentence. So, dude, the police accounts over in the UK, have you seen them, Matt? They're beyond parody.
I can't tell which ones are real and which ones are fake. You really can't. I mean, so let's go through this again. Speeding, jamming radar for your speed, traffic tickets, okay, and flipping off the police.
Traffic tickets, and then flipping off the camera, which I don't think you should be thrown in jail for whatsoever. But
this is the important part. Not only did he get thrown in jail, he's getting 8 months in a fucking cage for this. I tell it all the time. You have to put it in the starkest terms. You're not putting someone in jail. You're putting them in a concrete box for 8 months for evading, for giving the police the finger. And they put it on Twitter. Yep, and they put it on Twitter.
And they were proud of it.
All snarky, and they're all proud. Just like all those Metro Police says, look how many knives we collected on our knife collecting duty, because now knives are outlawed in London. Meanwhile, their murder rate is now way above New York City's.
Yeah. So
Um,
I mean, and then the people
Sorry.
wonder why they wanted Brexit, right? So you get locked up for 8 months for driving, and flipping off the thing. If your child's in the hospital, they can decide to kill them. But police are locking people up and trying to collect knives off the street. But at the same time, I don't know. Have you ever heard of Rotterdam? Child gang
Right.
rape, massive, 1,000 people.
Covered
Everyone who
up.
thinks I'm lying, look up Rotterdam. Over 1,000 women, young girls, groomed by migrants and raped systematically that the police knew about for years and covered up. Okay, so when
Because
your
they
police is
don't want to be
covering that up,
racist.
but then putting citizens in jail for flipping off traffic cameras, it makes you wonder about your government. Are they really on your side or not? And clearly, to me, it looks like they are not.
No, they're
Uh,
not. When I saw this, I
I
thought it
couldn't.
was
I
a
didn't
parody
believe it.
account. I thought it was a parody account. I got to tell you, the police stations in Britain are the worst, and they also are the worst with trying to get people to report hate speech crimes.
Hmm.
They will proudly tweet out, "Hey, if you think you're being funny on the internet, watch out because we're gonna come put you in jail for it." Like
Yeah.
they're totally open about it, and they have free reign. And man, I've never been more thankful to live in the United States than when I see these stories coming out of the United Kingdom. It's absolutely atrocious.
Dude, it's these stories that sell guns. Like,
It really is.
and like that's why I wish conservatives would just be honest about their opinion on guns. Like, it's not for hunting. No, it is for shooting a government official when he comes to my door and tries to take my kid or put me in jail for a traffic violation. It is for use against the government when they freak out and get tyrannical, like they're like what's going on in China, which is
Let's
you
go
know
into that.
so yeah, and just more instance of the government losing their mind here. I mean, the government already is tyrannical in China. It's a communist state, complete control. But
Yep.
um, this is a new story. By 2020, China plans to use social credit points to restrict the travel and other perks of living, basically, of, quote, untrustworthy citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So
We're living in Black
basically,
Mirror. The people in China are living in a Black Mirror episode.
living in Black Mirror. And I mean, okay, China, sure, communist state, total control by the government. But okay, if that's up here, if China's the worst example, right? Or Soviet Russia in the past, okay, how about the UK locking up these people? And then if we're at the bottom, let's not pretend we're not climbing that same ladder. So,
Yeah, I think it was Mance Raider. I'm not sure if you follow him on any social media. He's a libertarian guy, but he
I
recently
don't.
wrote a book called "The Kids Aren't All Right" about the sort of free speech controversies on college campuses. And one point that he made
Hmm.
is, we talk, dude, Canada's crazy. It won't happen here. Britain, they're crazy. It won't happen here.
It's happening here.
Misgendering laws are already being pushed through in California. It is here. It is here. You just aren't aware of it yet.
Yeah.
And the longer we sleep on this, one day we're going to wake up and you're going to go to get your kid out of the hospital and they're going to go say, nope, sorry.
Yep. We need to pull them off the ventilator.
It's got to stop it now.
But China, so by 2020, they plan to increase the number of security cameras. This is crazy, dude. They have 146 million cameras at the moment. They want to have 600 million cameras across the country where they can track cars, they can track bikes, they'll be able to identify faces and track your movement. Everything from being late on tax payments to jaywalking to smoking in non-smoking areas will affect your social credit score.
Wow.
And it can be increased by buying Chinese products or doing community service, other things that the government favors. So they're going to basically have a credit score on your social, on how you act as a person, your trustworthiness as a citizen in China. And if
So
your score is not
crazy.
high enough, you can't fly. If your score is really not high enough, you can't get on trains. You have a ban on cars, ban on buying real estate, and even if it's really bad and you're probably an agitator, a ban on high-speed internet.
Wow.
And they plan to apply this by 2020 to all 1.4 billion citizens.
That's a scary thought, man.
That's crazy, dude.
That we're living in the future. The future's now. The future is here. I like what you have here, we thought the internet was going to liberate and educate people, and it certainly has to a certain degree. I think where the internet's been very successful is in the Middle East, for example,
Hmm.
where all of a sudden, I mean, if you follow, Majid Nawaz and Sam Harris like I do, they're getting messages all the time from people in the Middle East that are, learning about secular values and liberalism. And it's a really great thing. In part, the Arab Spring protest I think it can be argued were sort of abetted, helped, pushed forward by the use of technology.
Yeah, for sure.
People smart, and it's been really worthwhile in that respect. But in other cases, places like Russia, in places like China, you're seeing the internet being used to keep the people in the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Or in Russia, they don't
To
need
propagandize.
to be. Yeah, in Russia, they don't need to be in the bubble. You can just have so much propaganda out there that your citizens will do the propagandizing for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have people like Garry Kasparov, world chess champion, who consistently, rightly speaks out against the Russian state and Vladimir Putin and his oligarchs. And the people that attack him are Russians.
Yeah.
They're like, for him, he's like, I'm one of you. Like, I'm trying to get you guys out of this. It is so much better to live in a pluralistic Western society. But, yeah, now people are willing to, maybe that's a whole other topic. We can talk about anti-imperialism, but that rabbit hole that people go down, and anything the West does is evil. The internet won't get them out of it. They speak in their bubble. They have their Facebook groups. They have their Twitter followers. And I don't know how you get through to someone like that.
I mean, the government's not your friend. I don't know if any of these – I hope one of those last three stories makes that very clear.
I hope
they're not on your side.
The government is not on your side.
The nanny state is not good.
Yep.
Simple as that.
They're not on your side. Lastly, let's talk about some serious news and not so much scary.
Sure.
North Korea, South Korea.
I know you got a lot of thoughts on this. This is definitely the biggest news of the whole thing. Well, save the best for last.
Yeah, North Korea, South Korea. Kim Jong-un stepped over and was invited into South Korea. It was a really interesting, really cool moment to see him shake hands with Moon Jae-in.
The photo op was pretty cool.
Exactly, and invited over. They were hugging, they were embracing. It wasn't as creepy as Trump Macron. Which was a little creepy at time, the bromance. But that's just the French. They're romantics at heart. But the North Korean-South Korea summit, it's going almost too well. And maybe I'm a pessimist,
sure.
But
I certainly am.
Kim Jong-un came out today and said, hey, a few days ago maybe, and said, hey, I'll do full denuclearization for the promise that the United States won't invade. That seems too good to be true.
Yeah.
That seems way too good to be true. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe Kim is just trying to win some favor and clout for the negotiations.
This could maybe just be him testing Trump, seeing if he can get on his good graces, appeal to his willingness to want to get a deal done, and then hopefully get some sanctions relief and just go back to his old model of biding time. But
yeah, so what came out was they want to model the denuclearization of North Korea after Libya, and this is according to John Bolton,
right? Our old buddy,
and I just found it ironic, as you may have guessed, because Muammar Gaddafi, the secular dictator of Libya, after seeing what happened to Saddam Hussein in 2003, gave up his weapons of mass destruction to the international community in a bid that he was like, hey, maybe it'll keep the United States away and like win me some clout, and we can I'll be able to keep being a dictator.
Right.
And what ended up happening is it created fertile ground for the United States to support rebels in the region, which further destabilized Libya. Okay, it wasn't a stable country to begin with. And we supported the rebels, and Muammar Gaddafi went out in every dictator's worst nightmare.
Yep, in a crowd of his own people, getting sodomized with a knife.
He was hiding in a hole. The rebels found him, and they paraded him across the street and put a bayonet up his ass. And I don't recommend the video. I saw that 10 years ago, or I guess however many long ago it was.
I don't know, 9.
Not worth it. Is Gaddafi a bad guy? Yeah. Was he secular and better than Islamist and jihadi terrorist? Yes.
Yep.
Is there a slave trade going on in Libya now after we destabilized it? Yes. Is Libya in better shape?
What did Hillary say?
We came, we saw, he died. Ha 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 ha.
Yep.
Yeah, Hillary, and now people are being, auctioned off for it looks like Roots, like the slave auctions. You're like, that's not real. No one's doing that.
They're literally bringing Africans up from the middle of the continent to Libya and selling them as slaves. It's unbelievable.
And you don't hear a peep.
Nope, that's another thing. You don't hear a peep
Isn't
about
it weird that the Pod Save America bros just don't talk about that? Like, I never see Ben Rhodes say
tweeting
something
about how
Libya.
Totally fucked up in Libya.
Interesting,
or,
Ben.
I don't know where else, Syria or Yemen or I don't know, the whole entire Middle East that they lit on fire.
Yep. If George Bush set a small fire, Ben Rhodes and crew definitely lit it ablaze.
But getting back to the optimism,
yeah, let's be optimistic. I'm sorry, I forgot we were supposed to be a little cheerful on this one.
So I mean, I don't know what to think. See, I don't want Trump to go too far. I understand that obviously we have to make concessions. A promise, I'm way good with a promise. I really have no interest in invading North Korea.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think where this could end up eventually with the negotiations is the U.S. pulling troops entirely off the peninsula, because that's something that the president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in, has voiced support for, in running for election and during his presidency.
Would that be Ben?
I would not be in favor of that.
Really? Why not?
I mean, I think it's a deterrent. I think it's North Korea could make promises and they could be proving to hold up with those promises, but having troops on that border there is a reminder that if anything goes wrong, we're right here.
Okay.
And I'm not willing to give up that chip based on any of the promises that we could get out of him, even no matter how concrete they appear. Maybe in 30 years after, complete denuclearization and some progress with the regime, but you don't pull that card right away.
Yeah, I would definitely need to see actual efforts being made.
Actual efforts. There's some fake efforts. Like they link their time zones. North Korea was going to move their time up 30 minutes so that they're unified,
But I need real denuclearization efforts. And so I was listening to Michael Malice earlier.
He's great on this.
If you are unaware, Michael Malice has written a book, Dear Reader. He has been to North Korea. He knows the ins and outs of the nuances of the North Korean and South Korean culture. Mm-hmm. He's a great resource on anything North Korea. And what he was saying is, before we get too optimistic, not a single nuclear weapon or facility has been offered or given access to.
Sure.
And more importantly, in my view, in Michael Malice's view, this whole thing should end, right? Obviously, we don't want a nuclear holocaust on the Korean Peninsula, right? That's most important, stopping nuclear war. But what else is important is not a single North Korean has been freed from the gulag. No one from North Korea has ever even entertained the idea that these innocent people being locked in concentration camps for made-up thought crimes, right? They didn't do anything really wrong. What they really did is they went against Kim, or they didn't pray hard enough, right? And they're in concentration camps.
Labor camps, work camps.
North Korea is the worst state on this entire planet. They are bottom of the bottom, okay? And we should keep this in mind when you see the hugs and the kisses and the fun and the cheering. It's right. That's a show. And it'll be really great if North Korea follows through and denuclearizes, right?
Sure.
But let's keep our eye on the prize. And the prize is that
there's some untold millions locked in jail.
Exactly. That there's a state in this world where people by the millions are essentially slaves. North Korea is a slave state.
It's a slave state.
And so that's why I'm skeptical.
I mean, yeah, he hasn't promised anything concretely. And also, to go to your point, he did say they would close the Punjae-ri test facility where they've tested nuclear weapons before. Okay. However, there's also conflicting reports that apparently it kind of collapsed on itself and would be out of commission for many months.
I heard they don't need it anymore. That's
right.
That's what my impression.
It's like one of those like show concessions. So it's still unclear, despite the fanfare and the photo opping, whether this is what the end result of this would be. Mm-hmm. But the photo ops did look good. Like, you're going to see those pictures.
No, it
in
looks good.
Textbook.
Listen, I mean, listen, if this goes through, give Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize. This will be one of the biggest foreign policy achievements an American president has ever had.
100%.
But we just got to watch, because what I also
And we're not
think,
there yet, but I'd like to, again, hey, about that double standard. Just all for 1 minute, imagine this was President Obama. Just for 1 minute.
oh, he got the Nobel Peace Prize before he did anything. He wasn't even elected.
Literally, just for getting elected to office, he got the Nobel Peace Prize. So, yeah, I mean, the fanfare and the pom-pom cheering for him on this would be unbelievable.
Right.
But
and again, these negotiations will probably continue long after President Trump leaves office. But
yeah,
if this is an initiative that he gets the ball rolling on what eventually ends up being denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, that's something that no one can argue with. That's certainly a massive achievement.
Yep. Dotard Donald Trump and Little Rocket Man.
Yeah, and I've heard journalists on both sides talking, and everyone's very consistent. Donald Trump does this. He goes down as one of the bigger foreign policy presidents in the United States history.
I mean, I don't see how he can't, but like I said, we're not there yet. There's still a lot more that needs to come out. And he's going to have this meeting, by the end of May, or was it early June? So in the next month, he'll be having the face-to-face with Kim. And then, like you said, the talks will go on for months.
Yeah, we won't hear
if there were to be a deal
it.
such as like something similar to the Iran deal, something comprehensive that is signed, it would be closer to 2020 before anything like that would happen.
And, we're getting a little late here. I see we're at an hour 11.
I know you have some thoughts on Iran.
Yeah, maybe we can save that for the next. We'll save this for the next podcast to see what happens and what comes of it.
We'll
basically,
see what
Netanyahu said he found he presented a treasure trove of files and CDs saying that he proved that Iran lied about their nuclear weapons program and that Iran is actually building a bomb. And I would just like to say, Netanyahu has been saying Iran is about to have a bomb since 1992. He said it in 1992, 95, 97, 2002, and 2007. I was just looking at the Intercept article today. So, grain of salt, people. Grain of salt. But we'll talk about it, and Bobby is very against the Iran deal. So next podcast, we'll bring it out and we'll start yelling at each other.
Bring that out. Keep an eye out for some written pieces. Me and Matt have had a lot going on. We've had the podcast regular, but both going to try and get back to some writing this week.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. Ombudsmanreport.com. Follow Matt on Twitter.
Wait, sorry. I think I might have missed that.
Bob J Politics.
I think I might have missed that. You skipped a little bit. Yep.
What'd I miss?
Follow me on Twitter at Planet Politico. Matthew Sperrier. Bobby, give him your handle.
Bobby J Politics on Twitter. Come for the hot takes.
Come for the hot takes. Stay because you love us.
Stay for the very occasional written article and the retweets of this podcast.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.